When the surreal news of Anthony Bourdain's death was made public in June, I was shocked and then confused. Dead at 61? Suicide? What on earth is going on? Rich, famous, a father of a young daughter, dating his soulmate, the best job imaginable, a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, a best-selling author, loved and admired by millions. How could this be? The only explanation that makes any sense is that somehow he fell into a deep pit of black depression and couldn't find his way out. I've been in that pit 1,000 times. The despair and hopelessness is crushing and soul-wrenching and seemingly endless. My suicidal depression was ignited by spikes in stress. It's hard for me to admit, but I survived only because I was a coward. I could never find the courage to pull the trigger. Luckily, 20-some years ago, I was able to find the answers and haven't had a single bout of depression since. I love Tony. I dread to think what a horrible state he was in that night, where he would hang himself with a belt from a bathrobe. And when it was found that there was no alcohol or drugs in his system, it somehow made this tragedy even worse. Most people with toxic depression don't or won't talk about it. There's denial and stigma and shame. But if ever there was a time to tell my story, this is it. To those who are fortunate enough to have never experienced it, deep depression can be a puzzle and a mystery. Many believe it to be a weakness, a character flaw, or a failing. Let me give you some personal insight as to what it's all about. My problems started very early in life, way back in the 1940s, when there was little widely known about stress and mental disorders. Back then, what I can remember is that most anything could jangle my nerves, get my heart racing and my stomach churning. Why I was so much more susceptible than most, I will never know. Childhood. Oh my goodness. Childhood was not easy. I had no confidence or self-worth, and to make it worse, was embarrassed and ridiculed for years with a lisp and then later stuttering all through my teens. Being teased and laughed at as a kid is something you never forget. For decades, my life was a jumble of good days, bad days, and horrific days. The ebb and the flow came without any warning. I could feel super in the morning and be down in the dumps by dinner time. To this day, the most baffling aspect of all this was that when the depression took over, this was now my reality, my new normal. For some unexplainable reason, my mind became locked in a sort of tunnel vision and blocked from being able to remember a happy past or visualize a happy future. In that dark tunnel, nothing seemed to have any value, and life itself was all but meaningless. Looking back, it makes no sense at all, but that's the way it was. And let me add, never did I truly think I had a disorder, and never did I contact a doctor or a psychiatrist. I've asked myself over and over, why not? I have no answers. Often I would wake under a heavy cloak of foreboding. All I could think of was the misery, the gloom, the pain of being alive. Some days I'd lay there for an hour, but there was always obligations and responsibilities to be taken care of. But it was exhausting just to crawl out of bed and took all the energy I could muster to shower, get dressed, and out the door. Simple chores became a series of laborious burdens. The black clouds surrounded me all day, making me short-tempered and irritable, impatient and rude. This state, riddled with suicidal thoughts, could last for days, a week, or even more. This sounds far-fetched, but I truly wanted to die. But I never had the guts to carry it through. People say of Tony, how could he have been so selfish as to leave his loved ones to mourn and suffer? I wonder, and maybe believe that he, like me, could only think that his family and the world would be better off without him. That's how crazy this thing is. Depression is not a condition that is related to success and failure. By any measure, Tony Bourdain was considered to be the epitome of success. Let me tell you a story. At the height of my success, I booked a month in England to indulge my two passions, snooker and poker. This was to be a dream vacation. But before I left, there was a ton of work to do to prepare the business for the busy season. Working nonstop, I got it all done, but boarded the plane a frazzled mess. During the flight, depression kicked in, and I spent two of the most wretched and wasted weeks of my life in London, a city I love. The trip was cut short, and I flew back to more of the same in Canada. Of course, all this makes absolutely no sense to a normal person. Most everybody has gone through the blues, mild depression, without any serious consequences. But deep depression is a whole different ballgame. It transforms you into a strange, somewhat unrecognizable person. And there's no rationale to it. Medical people explain that the flow of adrenaline triggered by attacks of anxiety drastically change and disrupt the chemical neurotransmitters in the brain. It's like depression hijacks thought control to the point that a person can't think clearly or prudently or intelligently, making it just so difficult to concentrate and make good decisions. Depression drives reckless and compulsive behavior like alcohol and drug abuse, gambling. There are feelings of guilt and shame, a need to get revenge, of isolation and destructive self-criticism. There is little interest in the usual pleasures of eating, socializing, movies, and sex. There's nervousness, fear, and worry that something terrible will happen, even though there is no logical or specific reason to be afraid. And always, 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 an overwhelming sense of hopelessness and helplessness. A couple of decades ago, caught in the crossfire of law enforcement and my business partner with his criminal past, I lost my hard-won modest fortune. The anxiety was devastating and drove me to the very brink. But by chance, I stumbled across a link between depression and extreme stress. I learned the whys and the hows, the ins and the outs, and dug myself out of this black hole once and for all. I became the person I always hoped to be, happy, calm, composed, friendly, patient, understanding, healthy, and free. I'm still poor, but this doesn't seem near as important as it once did. If you or someone you know has a problem with anxiety or depression, I have many of the answers. Let me explain. 10 years ago, I developed an online quit smoking program called Smoke Free and Smiling, made up of video, audio, and a couple of books. But the project got derailed by the financial collapse of '08, closely followed by my personal financial collapse. I ran out of working capital and could not find a partner or investor. Discouraged and broke, I shelved the program and went into a multi-year survival mode. But a few months ago, I dug it out and it struck me that even with its faults, the material and research is still current and valuable. But why I mention this now is that one of the books, Tips, Tactics, and Tales, is loaded with all sorts of info on understanding the workings of the mind and in managing or minimizing stress. Check it out on the website, smokefreeandsmiling.com. And if you know anyone who is looking to quit cigarettes, please feel free to pass on this link, at no cost, of course. Well, I hope I've shed some light into this murky, perplexing curse. My journey down this long and winding road has been terrifying and treacherous, but I sure am enjoying this final stretch. It's good to be alive. And how lucky am I to have this chance to be a part of the life of my extraordinary 4-year-old grandson, Henry. I'm not a religious man, but this message has crucial meaning for me. May you be granted the serenity to accept the things you cannot change, the courage to change the things you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thanks for watching.